Hey everyone, so I just wanted to come on here and give another update. I had my 5.5 year checkup in July, I think, because I finished chemotherapy at the end of January. So yeah, I'm pretty sure that's 5.5 years because I had my 5-year checkup around January and then had 5.5 years in July, and that checkup went fine. I'm still in remission. My bloods were normal. Nothing was weird there. And I also had it face-to-face because most of my checkups have been over telehealth ever since, we've been living in a time of COVID. And so most appointments are through telehealth, especially if they're pretty low risk. And so I think the main thing that they check during my checkups is my bloods. And then, obviously if you're also there in person, then they'll also kind of check your lymph nodes that nothing feels weird. Nothing feels out of the ordinary. So in July, I had my 5.5 year checkup, and the hematologist, she was asking me if I wanted to come back again. I did say that I want to come back in a year's time, I guess to move our appointments yearly. Just for a little bit longer. Maybe I'll just do one more checkup with her. I think I just really like going to see the specialist because I know a lot of people can still do their checkups with their GPs, and obviously if there's anything particularly weird, you're going to go get that checked up and you're going to get a referral to your specialist. But because my cancer and the symptoms of my cancer were so mild, they obviously did become more intense. The itching in my feet became more and more intense and more unbearable, and that's a really weird symptom to have as a young person with no other health issues, to have such intense itching. But itching is such a mild thing. It's not a big deal. You don't think you're gonna have cancer if you have itchy feet. So I think, and because I didn't have any protruding lumps when I was sick, I think I just like having that check-in point with the hematologist, especially because, I feel like if out of all the specialists, they're the blood cancer specialists, and hopefully they get updated with new research and information. And I know as a health professional, we have to kind of get training every year, and you're part of even newsletters and kind of, what's the word? When people send like a list serve, an email list where people just get updated with stuff. And so I guess for me, sorry, I just dropped my phone. So I think for me, I like having that check-in with a specialist because I just, in my mind, think that that's the person who's going to give me that kind of updated info. But to be honest, I probably don't need to go see that specialist anymore. And I've known people who don't go, beyond 5 years. That's pretty normal. And even I've known people who, don't go to their follow-up checkups beyond a year or two because they actually find the whole experience just way too anxiety inducing, and it's more stressful. And if they notice anything odd about their body, they're going to go to their doctor anyway. So what's the point in having these kind of official checkups with your cancer specialist? So I don't know, that's obviously a personal preference thing. I just like it. So yeah, she told me that I'm still in remission, there's nothing odd. And she also told me that, at this point, because it's beyond 5 years, that I have I have the same likelihood of developing lymphoma as a random on the street. So I guess what that means is that I have a very low risk of relapsing now. My chance of relapsing is the same as any person that I might see at the shops getting lymphoma for the first time. Or someone my age getting lymphoma. So yeah, so I guess that just suggests that the stats are pretty low now, and relapse isn't really the biggest concern. She's happy that I kind of followed up those lumps in my breasts and nothing came from them, that they're just fibroadenomas. I always struggled with that word. So they're really benign. But even with that specialist, I'm still seeing her from a year's time of my last checkup as I guess a final point, just to confirm that everything looks normal because of my history. But my cancer specialist was really happy that I was just following it up to make sure that there is nothing strange. And I think that's the main thing in this space, living post-cancer, is just doing your checkups. If you find something weird in your body, even if it is in the realm of normal, most women will get some kind of lump in their breast, that's not a weird thing. It's still important to get it checked up anyway, because the risks. And we know that if you catch it early, you have a better chance of surviving or having less side effects or having less intense treatments. So I think that's the main thing I keep trying to remind myself, is not to get too caught up in thinking about cancer all the time, but just trying to be on top of checkups, especially if something odd pops up. But if there's nothing odd, then, you know, for the most part, I should try to live my life normally. Because, you know, living in a stressful state isn't good for the body either. That's not good for cancer or for your health in general. So, but what was interesting from the checkup is that my doctor told me that from now on, it's not so much about worrying about relapse, because there's such a low chance of that happening, even though we still have to look out for it. But it's more about trying to plan long term for the health consequences of having had 6 months of chemotherapy. So she said that if there are, I guess, like heart vulnerabilities in my family or in my genetics, so if I would be predisposed to getting some kind of heart disease or heart issue, that my chances of getting that is greater and I would get it earlier in life. So that's not too much of a concern from what I know about my own health and my family's health. But she also said the same for things like osteoporosis is probably my biggest risk, that chemotherapy is really bad for the bones. It's obviously bad for everything, but you really should be mindful of osteoporosis, and a lot of women, you know, can get it. And especially if you're not, you know, doing a lot of like strength training, which I've never been someone to do that. I've always, you know, my exercise of choice has always been walking. Except in high school, I did play basketball, but for the most part, it really is walking. And walking, you know, that's like a form of cardio. That's not really, that's not strength-based exercise. So she really encouraged me to start doing that now, because I could get osteoporosis much younger than a lot of people, especially if I would already have a vulnerability to getting it younger than a lot of other women, because I am not someone who does strength-based training. Or maybe there's something in my genetics too. So, but because of chemotherapy on top of all of that, you know, I don't know if she actually said the age of 40 something, but she said an age that felt very young to be thinking about getting something like osteoporosis. So I think she was just like, you know, try to incorporate strength-based training now to be able to build the strength of your bones, because yeah, you're at greater risk. And I guess the same thing with breast cancer. I just have I'm more likely to get it younger. So I guess across the board, it's just better to be on top of these things. I have to be a lot more on top of my health to kind of counteract. But in particular, I remember her saying heart disease and osteoporosis. So if my case is kind of similar to yours, and especially if you're a woman, then you know, it's really important to put in strength-based exercises. I know that's something that is kind of being talked about a fair bit in general, not just with women who've gone through cancer and chemotherapy, that it's something that as women we really have a higher risk of developing osteoporosis because of our exercise choices. So yeah, it's kind of, for me, it was kind of like the final call to action, kind of the last nail in the coffin, saying, yes, I really should get on that strength-based exercise that everyone keeps telling me that's so important. Hearing it from my hematologist was definitely like, oh man, yeah, that's intense. Like I really don't want to have brittle bones, and that would be a nightmare. But yeah, if you're someone maybe with heart disease or some kind of heart issues in your family and you've had chemotherapy, then that's another big thing to think about. I think with COVID, I've become a lot more worried about my lungs, because I know that with my chemotherapy was ABVD, and I'm pretty sure the B stood for bleomycin, and I'm pretty sure it was the bleomycin that is cytotoxic to lungs and damages lungs, and it was removed from my schedule as soon as it could be. So as soon as I don't know if it was like a third of the way through or halfway through when I had my PET scan, and they could see that the chemotherapy was working and most of my cancer was gone. They just removed the bleomycin straight away and kept me on chemotherapy for longer to make sure the cancer was all done. But they took away that really damaging chemical. So yeah, I know that my lungs aren't 100%. And last year I got really sick for pretty much the entire month of August. I had some kind of bronchitis. It was, I guess, a cold that I didn't manage well and got worse and worse, and I ended up having like a chest infection. I had a proper bacterial chest infection, and I needed to have 2 different antibiotics. I think that I had to change for some reason. Anyway, it was a nightmare, and I got very sick, and looking back, I got pretty bad. Like, I was coughing up, you know, phlegm and all that, and it was really hard to clear my lungs for a long time, and eventually I did get better, but I was probably sick, like badly sick for 6 weeks, which is weird for a 28-year-old. I was 27 at the time. 28, I'm 29 now. Whatever, you know, for a 20-something-year-old, it's weird to be that sick over a cold that just got more and more complicated. And when I talked to the doctor, she was saying that, you know, there's a pretty good chance that the chemotherapy did damage my lungs in such a way that, yeah, maybe I would struggle more with respiratory diseases, or, you know, I have to be mindful of things like bronchitis or the cold or the flu, like anything that can get into your lungs, I should be mindful of, because my lungs may struggle to just kind of clear themselves on their own. It's a lot harder for my lungs to do that. And I know that my grandfather on my mother's side, he had emphysema very young, and he also smoked a lot, like a lot of people in that generation didn't, but he died very, like, quite young. And I don't know, that's kind of my own mind thinking about that he got emphysema so young. Maybe there is like a lung vulnerability in the family, and then there's chemotherapy on top of that for my case. So COVID is pretty scary. And I got vaccinated in May, June with Pfizer. So I'm really happy that that's done. And I actually didn't have any side effects at all. I didn't even have like a fever or chills, like nothing. And maybe I did have some fatigue, I don't know, but I'm always slightly tired. I'm obviously battling fatigue in a mild way in general. So I just didn't notice it, but it was really comforting to get the vaccine, just thinking about my lungs potentially being damaged from chemotherapy, and also hearing so much about long COVID that some people are experiencing, where they're struggling with fatigue symptoms in particular long-term after having the full-blown COVID virus. And that's so scary, you know. I have accepted, that's probably a strong word. I have mostly accepted my life in terms of fatigue, you know, like I'm happy I'm alive. It's way better than being dead. And if this is the cost of having chemotherapy at 22, it's the cost. And I can mostly manage my fatigue, to the point that sometimes I'm managing it so well that I think, do I even have fatigue? Am I making it up? But I'm not making it up. If I don't manage it, I will crash. But I have mostly made my peace with the mild but very real and potentially debilitating fatigue that I have to manage. And so the idea of adding extra fatigue, or, you know, damaging my immune system further with COVID and having long COVID is just really scary. So I know the research is still coming out around that, and I'm going to be really curious for myself and other cancer survivors what COVID's impact is on us, and then, you know, how much the vaccine mitigates, because obviously we're all going to get COVID eventually. That's kind of inevitable. But does the vaccine mitigate that stuff? And to be honest, even though it's a really horrible situation that we're in with COVID, I am grateful that, fingers crossed, because of what's happened with long COVID, there's going to be a lot more research into fatigue and immune you know, suppressed immune systems, and there's another word that I'm trying to think of that I can't think of, but, you know, like that cluster of illness that is quite invisible and is mild in the sense that a lot of people can learn to manage it, but it's a real spectrum, you know, and it can become very debilitating very quickly, fatigue. So it'd be great to have more research into it, so that way they can study our immune systems better, learn how we can actually recover from fatigue better. That's going to benefit so many cancer survivors. So yeah, that's something that I think is kind of like one positive out of a really terrible thing, the pandemic. But yeah, that's kind of something I wanted to quickly update you guys on, just in terms of my last checkup, kind of the info that I got around that, things that I'm going to take on board, which I've already started doing some strength-based training, which is really hard for me to do because I hate having to like carve out time for something like that. I like walking and listening to a podcast and kind of getting lost in my thoughts. Whereas strength-based training is like gym kind of work, and I just hate gyms. I don't like the idea of just standing still, you know, doing exercises. So at the moment, I've been just trying to like pick up cartons of milk when I'm in the kitchen and trying to do like some basic, you know, kind of stretches and exercises with them, you know, for 5 minute in 5-minute intervals. Well, maybe I'm chatting to my partner, or I'm listening to a story, or watching like a YouTube video. Just to try to get me to do it, even if it's in like really small stints, because obviously something is better than nothing, but I have to take it seriously, like it's important for my health. But yeah, I will probably leave this here. I feel like I've rambled a fair bit. I know I take forever to come back to videos, and I had a whole bunch of videos planned with other people, other cancer survivors, but it's just life is so intense, and you know, I work 4 days a week, have fatigue, have stepchildren. It's a lot. So I am trying my best. I have good intentions. I do aim to make more videos, and I do want to make more collaborative videos, but really I've kind of accepted that it's just going to happen when it happens. So I'm sorry about that, but I hope you enjoyed this video today, and I will yeah, talk to you guys in the next video. The only other thing I wanted to say is I have mentioned in another video that I actually have an Instagram now. I don't post a lot on it, but if you wanted to follow my more cancer-based Instagram, it is she_is_moonlit. And my other one that I started a little while ago is for my writing and my reading, my love of reading and my love of writing, because I've mentioned a few times that writing is one of the things that I love, and a dream of mine would be to like actually publish a book that's really awesome and is actually pretty decent. And so I've been working on a novel for the last couple of years, and I'm going to get it edited properly soon. And so I mostly talk about books and book reviews and stuff like that on that Instagram, but I also give little updates on my writing stuff. So if you're a bit creative, or you also love books, then follow me on Writer, WRITER_ISENDA, Isenda. I hope you guys are all well. Please let me know down in the comments below how you've been doing, how your checkups went recently, and I'll see you in the next video. Okay, bye.